The Magic Thief, Chapter 6. The next morning, I mixed some biscuits the way Nevery had told me the night before. Flour, water, riser, a little butter, and salt, all beaten up really well with a wooden spoon and plopped into a pan, which I put down into the fire's coals. Then I got out the other pan and the bacon and got that started, and checked the kettle for water and swung it on its hook over the fire. After a while, the biscuits turned browny black, so I took them off the fire. I tried one. It was like an egg. Hard and crusty on the outside, soft and runny on the inside. Not bad. I ate another one with honey and then had some bacon and some tea. Bennett came grumbling up the stairs. His hair was sticking up all over his head, and he looked ferocious like a bear. I stayed out of his way while he made himself tea. He put together a tray and took it up to Nevery in the study on the third floor. When I'd finished my tea and gotten warm enough by the fire, I went up too and peeked in the doorway. Nevery, looking fierce and red-nosed from his cold, was pacing before the hearth. He and Bennett had been talking clear as clear, and Bennett, standing by the window, didn't look happy. "Come in, boy," Nevery said. I went in. He hadn't eaten the biscuits, I noticed. "The Magisters meet this morning," he said. "Right," I nodded. "Are you willing to be my spy at the meeting? It will require risking the Embaro spell." I nodded again. It was time for me to start doing wizardly things. "I cannot predict what you'll become, boy," Nevery said. "The Embaro will change you into a creature characteristic to your nature." He looked me up and down. He was, I could tell, trying to imagine what kind of animal I'd be. "I'm not afraid, Nevery," I said. Bennett, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, made a growling sound. I wondered if the change spell had been tried on him, and if it had, what kind of creature he'd become. "Humph," Nevery grunted. "We'll try it then. You may go, Bennett." The muscle left the room, giving me an extra serving of glare before he went. Nevery went to the table, where he studied a page in his grimoire for a few moments, muttering something under his breath, then slammed the book closed. After wiping his nose with his handkerchief, he reached into his pocket for his locust stone. "Come here, boy," he said. I went to stand before him. "Do not resist the spell as it affects. It will hurt a little. A lot, he meant, but I wasn't worried. Now, keep still." Nevery took a deep breath. Carefully, he laid the night-black locus magicalicus against my forehead. It felt soft and warm. Everything else in the room fell absolutely silent. Pressure built. My eardrums felt as if they were going to crack. Then Nevery's voice rang out, spiraling through my ears and bouncing around in my skull. As he intoned the spell, the locust stone began to glow. He raised it over my head, and sparks scattered, dash flashing, surrounding us with a curtain of glittering light. His voice grew louder, the words tumbling faster and faster from his mouth. My skin felt like paper lit on fire, and my knees grew weak. I fell onto the floor. I saw a flash and heard a brief clap of thunder, and suddenly felt nothing at all. After a while, I opened my eyes, then closed them again. The room had gotten very tall. The chairs loomed overhead. Magic, sure as sure. Footsteps approached. Nevery's. I cracked my eyes open again. The wizard was bending over me, huge, reaching an enormous hand toward my head. I yowled and leapt away. He, startled, fell backward onto the carpeted floor. I almost laughed. He looked so funny knocked back like that. But why was he so big? He got to his feet. "Boy," he said, "come here and look at this." He turned and brought a large flat square from the high table and set it on the floor. I padded over to have a look. Well, and I'd been afraid that my characteristic creature would be a cockroach or a mangy pipmouse. Clear as clear, Nevery had thought so too. But in the mirror, I saw a midnight black, skinny young cat with sparkling blue eyes and a quirked tail. It looked just like me, but furrier. "It is you," Nevery said, lifting the mirror away. He sat in his chair and looked down at me. "The Embaro spell affected remarkably easy, boy." Only half listening, I raised a paw and flexed, and sharp claws sprang out. "The Magisters' meeting is in an hour," Nevery said. I turned my head to examine the tail curving over my back. Amazing! "Use that time to get acquainted with your new form. I have work to do." He turned away and busied himself with papers at the table. I remained still for a few moments. I practiced twitching my tail and swiveling my ears at every rustle-rustle of a turning page. A few dust motes sifted down from overhead, and I felt a fierce urge to capture them and bear them squeaking and squirming to my den. I pounced four-footed. My balance felt so sure. I couldn't fall if I tried. I leapt around the room, testing. It was the tail. It kept me perfectly balanced at all times. What fun! I practiced prowling, making no sound. My black fur blended easily into the shadows at the edges of the room. Oh, what a wonderful thief a cat would make! I made another whirlwind tour of the room. At the table, Nevery slammed down the book he'd been reading. Perish it, boy, can't you keep still? I crouched down on my haunches and stalked his foot. Pounce! He pulled away, frowning. Stop messing about. It's almost time for the meeting. He found his cane, put on his gray robe, and picked me up. As we walked through the dark, damp tunnels, he whispered instructions on what to look for and listen for. When we got to the Magister's Hall Island, he opened the gate and set me down, nudging me with his foot to start me on my way. I twitched my tail and scampered off to steal some information. Keeping to the shadows along the edge of the passages, the stone floor cold against my paw pads, I slunk into Magister's Hall. The meeting room was at the end of a long hallway, just as Nevery had said, but the door was closed. I padded up to it and crouched, listening. Voices, but no words. Drats! I couldn't get in. I slunk away and four-footed it back to the tunnel gate and waited for Nevery. Soon he was there, wearing his gray robe and pacing. He scooped me up and stepped back to Heart's Ease and up to his study. As soon as the door closed behind him, he threw off his robe and wide-brimmed hat, pulled out his locust stone, and clapped his hands. Sparks flew. He grabbed up 2 handfuls of sparks and dumped them over my head. I felt the tingle, saw the flash of light, and heard the thunder. Sometime later, when I opened my eyes, Nevery was standing over me. I sat up. I raised my hand. No more fur, no claws. I looked over my shoulder. No lovely quirked tail. I stretched and stood up, almost falling over. I missed the tail already. Now, boy, tell me about the meeting. He sat down at the table and picked up his pen, ready to take notes. Oh, he was not going to like this. Well, Nevery, I began. Well, boy? I took a deep breath. I couldn't get in. He threw his pen onto the table, ink spattered. Curse it, boy, you'll have to go again after lunch. I nodded. And I expect you to get in one way or another. He pointed toward the door, scowling. Go tell Bennett to give you something to do till then. As I went out, I heard him mutter, useless. Hearing him say that gave me a hollow, empty feeling in my stomach. From Nevery's journal. Blasted boy. Sent him to listen in at Magister's Hall. Came back with nothing. Embarrow spell had odd effect, though. Note to self. Must read Sarpent's historical grimoires to see if he notes this kind of effect. Generally, undergoing Embarrow not a pleasant experience. Last attempted this spell on Bennett. Disaster. Boy seemed to enjoy it. Consider possibility that because boy has touched Locus Magicalicus, it has developed an affinity to him? Odd sort of autosyncratichy. Warrants further investigation. Note to self. Do not allow boy to cook. Have Bennett do it.